So we will be reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. We are reading from volume number 2, chapter title, Breaking Ground. I'll read. There are so many pictures for the continuation, so let me see where was that last one, because I want to continue. This one is Srila Prabhupada is explaining in his own word. This is one paragraph, little longer, but I think it would be nice to read it. People are suffering for want of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, each and every one of us should be engaged in the preaching work of Krishna consciousness for the benefit of the whole world. Lord Chaitanya, whose picture is in the front of our store, has very nicely preached the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. The Lord says, quote, just take my orders, all of you, and become spiritual master, unquote. Lord Chaitanya gives the order that in every country you go and preach Krishna consciousness. So if we take up this missionary work to preach Bhagavad Gita as it is, without interpretation and without any material motives behind it, as it is, then Krishna says, it shall be done. We should not have any attractions for worldly activities. Otherwise, we can't have Krishna. Hari Bol. This is the bottom line. But if it doesn't mean that we should be inimical to the people of the world, no. It is our duty to give them the highest instruction that you become Krishna conscious. That's where we left yesterday, so we will continue. A young man in the audience seems unable to contain himself and begins making his own incoherent speech. Prabhupada, no, you cannot disturb just now. Man standing up. Now wait a minute, man. A quarrel begins and others try to quiet him. Prabhupada, no, 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 no. Not just now. No, no, you cannot ask just now. Man, well, I'm trying to talk. Prabhupada says, no, just now you cannot ask. Man, but wait a minute, man. Wait. Prabhupada, why do you interfere just now? We have a regular question time. Others in the audience, let the man finish. Yeah, let him talk. Quote in the parenthesis, the man's supporters defend his right to speak while others try to silence him. Parenthesis over. So second man, he said, I have just one question, please. How long is an individual allowed or expected to go on without any type of thought? How long? Prabhupada, I'm not finished. We will give question time after finishing the talk. In parenthesis, the parties go on quarreling. Parenthesis over. All right. I'm very glad you are curious, but please wait. Have some patience because we have not finished. As soon as we finish, after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I will tend to your question. Don't be impatient. Sit down. In the parenthesis, the audience quiet down and the Swami goes on with his talk. Parenthesis over. After 5 minutes, Prabhupada, all right, this gentleman is impatient. We shall stop here. Now, what is your question, sir? So the man says, practically, we tend to place emphasis on those We identified with the fact itself. Many people are meant to explain the why, force, and wherefore of the metaphysical truth that I think, therefore I am. Prabhupada, what is your particular question? Amen. I have no answer to that question. Rather, but that I attempt, I live, I breathe. Prabhupada said, yes. Man, so ability, tell me why I have nothing to do with it. May I understand the why, force, and whereas, F-O-R-E-S. Haribol. Prabhupada, that's all right. Man, I have difficulty in you. I have difficulty in saying, Prabhupada, so long as we are in this material world, there are so many problems. Man, not many problems. It is not many problems. This is the greatest fact. I know. Prabhupada said, yes. Man, I also know that the whys and wherefores of my particular. Prabhupada said, yes. Man, I didn't come here, but let me explain my position. This isn't necessarily. I feel I must. I think the difference is to learn. You will find it innumerable times by the same token. Maybe we are able to reconcile the fact of individual being for a long time to find out why. Prabhupada, in parenthesis, turning to one of the boys, Roy, can you answer his question? It is a general question. You can answer, yes? Roy tells sympathetically to the rambling questioner. And Prabhupada addresses his audience. Enough questions. His voice now seems tired and resigned. Let us have kirtan. And the lower east side once again abates. The chanting begins. The brass kartals, Prabhupada voice carrying the melody, and the audience responding. It goes for half an hour and then stops. It is now 9 p.m. The audience sits before Swamiji while a boy brings him an apple, a small wooden bowl, and a knife. As most of the audience still sits and watches, gazing the after effect of chanting, as though it had been some new drug. The Swami cuts the apple in half, then in fourths, then in eighths, until there are many pieces. He takes one himself and asks one of the boys to pass the ball around. Swamiji holds back his head and deftly pops a slice of apple into his mouth without touching his finger to his lips. He chews a bit, ruminating, his lips closed. The member of the congregation munched silently on little piece of apple. Prabhupada stands, slips into his shoes and exits through the side door. As Prabhupada retired to his apartment and his guests disappeared through the front door back into the city, Haribol, Don and Raphael would turn out the lights, lock the front door, and go to sleep on the floor in their blankets. Don and Raphael had needed a place to stay when they heard about the Swami's place. Prabhupada had a policy that any boy who expressed even a little interest in becoming his student could stay in the storefront and make it his home. Of course, Prabhupada would ask them to contribute toward the rent and meals. But if, like Don and Raphael, they had no money, then it was still all right, provided that they help in other ways. Don and Raphael were the first two boys to take advantage of Prabhupada's offer. They were attracted to Swamiji and the chanting, but they weren't serious about his philosophy or discipline of devotional life. They had no jobs and no money. Their hair were long and unkept, and they lived and slept in the same clothes day after day. Prabhupada stipulated that at least while they were on the premises, they could not break his rules. No intoxication, illicit sex, meat eating, or gambling. He knew these two boarders weren't serious students, but he allowed them to stay in hopes that gradually they would become serious. Prabhupada is so patient, so compassionate to the fallen soul. Often some wayfaring stranger would stop by, looking for a place to stay at the night, and Don and Raphael would welcome them. An old white-bearded Indian-turned Christian who was on a walking mission proclaiming the end of the world and whose feet were covered with bandages, once slept for a few nights on a wooden bench in the storefront. Some nights, as many as 10 drifters would seek shelter at the storefront, and Don and Raphael would admit them, explaining that the Swami didn't object as long as they got up early. Get up early is so important, if you are serious about spiritual life. Even drifters whose only interest was a free meal could stay. And after the morning class and breakfast, they would usually drift off again into Maya. Prabhupada served them so nicely. One of these attorney in Houston that I know him for many, many years. And he has the bypass surgery some couple of weeks ago. So he was joining in the morning. And I remember he bring his father, mother, and everybody to pray to the deities. And their father and mother told me that they saw Prabhupada and they were able to take the prasadam when Prabhupada cooked and he offered. And he said he was so gentleman. So it's nice to see. But after surgery, I have left the message, but he has not returned me. When people become comfortable in their life, they forget Krishna. This is the Maya Devi tricks. Only time we remember Krishna when we are in trouble. But the real devotees, they always constantly remember, even though they are happy, sad, cold, hot, sick, healthy, no matter what it is, they never forget Krishna. And that attracts Krishna's attention when you remain fixed in your devotion. Otherwise, I have that some devotees, then they knows me, they heard about me through my relatives in Atlanta. And she never got a chance to associate or anything. And when she started joining, she said, Prabhuji, I heard about you, but I never take opportunity. Then she joined for some time. And I wrote her today. I didn't see her for a couple of days. I said, what happened? Why you are talking like that? That, oh, Prabhu, I would like to have your association. I missed for so many years. I heard from your relatives, but I never took interest. So you never know. If one measurement we should keep it in our devotional practice, at least for chanting Hare Krishna in the morning. If you cannot maintain the time that you commit, you know for sure that Maya Devi is working on you slowly and slowly. That's the only reason you give up your chanting. Other priority may sink into your life. Oh, I have to do this. That's Maya. In the morning, 2 o'clock is nobody bother you. So I wrote her, that what happened to you? Why you are talking like that? Now you have the ability to join every day. She was very enthusiastic. She helped me to create this chart, that so many people has seen before. That how when I do the gardening, I can, without the Japamala, I can count that I have chanted 108 mantras. And she helped me there. She was she was holding the chart every day when she joined. But that enthusiasm has gone. So let's see how she responds. Dawn and Raphael were the Swami's steady boarders. Oh, yeah. Although during the day they also went out, returning only for meals, sleep, and evening chanting. How compassionate Prabhupada is, Occasionally they would bath and then they would use the Swami's bathroom up in his apartment. How much tolerant Prabhupada was. Sometimes they would hang out in the storefront during the day. And if someone stopped by asking about the Swami's classes, they would tell the person all they knew, which wasn't much. They admitted that they weren't really into the Swami's philosophy and they didn't claim to be his followers. If someone persisted in inquiring about the Swami's teaching, Don and Raphael would suggest, quote, why don't you go up and talk to him? The Swami lives in the apartment building out back. Why don't you go up and see him? Hari Bol. So Prabhupada usually stayed in his apartment. Occasionally he might look out his window and see through the back window of the storefront that the light in the closet-sized bathroom had needlessly been left burning, coming down to ask the boys to turn it off and not waste electricity. He might find a few boys lying on the floor, talking or reading. Prabhupada would stand gravely, asking them not to leave the light on, stressing the seriousness of wasting Krishna's energy and money. How Prabhupada was so perfect. And when I have seen the devotees, they come to do the deity worship and they left behind the paraphernalia in a very bad manner. Do you think that Radhanila Madhava is pleased with your service? Give up those kind of a service if you cannot be attentive. Nobody is forcing you to come and do the deity worship. If you want to do with your voluntarily, do it with love and affection. Show your intent to please the Lord, not to leave the garbage behind. Hari Bol. I don't know what they have in their mind. Okay, let me see where we were. Yeah, he's talking about wasting Krishna's energy and money. He would stand dressed in khadi, that coarse handloom cotton woven from hand-spun thread, a cloth that to Americans appears somewhat exotic. Even the saffron color of Prabhupada's dhoti and chadar was exotic, produced from the traditional Indian dye. It was a dull, uneven color, different from anything Western. After Prabhupada turned off the light, the boy seems to have nothing to say and nothing more appropriate to do than look with interest at him for long. Awkward moment, and the Swami would leave without saying anything more. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Money was scarce. From his evening meetings, he would usually collect about $5 or $6 in change and bills. Don't talk of going up to New England to pick apples and bring back money for the Swami. Raphael said something about some money coming. Prabhupada waited and depended on Krishna. Sometime he would walk back and forth in the courtyard between the buildings. Seeming mysterious to the neighbors, he would chant on his beads, his hand deep in his bead bag. Mostly he kept to his room, working. As he had said during a lecture when living on the Bowery, quote, I am here, always working at something, or reading or writing. Something, reading or writing, 24 hours. Very well. His mission of translating Srimad Bhagavatam, of presenting the complete work in 60 volumes of 400 pages each, would alone occupy all his days and nights. He worked it at whenever possible, sitting at his portable typewriter or translating the Sanskrit into English. He especially worked in the very early hours of the morning when he would not be interrupted. He would comb through the Sanskrit and Bengali commentaries of the great acharyas, following their explanation, selecting passage from them, adding his own knowledge and realizations, and then laboriously weaving it all together and typing out his Bhaktivedanta purport. He had no means or immediate plan for financing the publishing of further volumes, but he continued in the faith that somehow they would be published. What a wonderful hard work Prabhupada has done. He had a broad mission, broader even than translating Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he gave much of his time and energy to meeting visitors. Had his only aim been to write, then there would have been no need to have taken the risk and trouble of coming to America. Now, many people were coming, and an important part of his mission was to talk to them and convince them of Krishna consciousness. Hey, I forgot to have the music. Very well. His visitors were usually young men who had recently come to live on the Lower East Side. He had no secretary to screen his visitors, nor did he have scheduled visiting hours. Whenever anyone happened by at any time, from early morning to 10 at night, Prabhupada would stop his typing or translating and speak with them. It was an open neighborhood, and many visitors would come by right off the street. Some were serious, but many were not. Some even came intoxicated. Often they came not to inquire submissively, but to challenge. So once a young hippie on an LSD trip found his way upstairs and sat opposite to the Swamiji. Quote, right now, I'm higher than you are, he announced. I'm God. Prabhupada bowed his head slightly, his palms folded. Quote, please accept my obeisances, he said. Haribol. How many times are we offering obeisances? I don't know. This is the practice our Acharya has shown, that we should offer 1,000 obeisances to the deity every day and 2,000 obeisances to the devotees or the member, whoever living being. They have Krishna in their heart. What's wrong in it, respecting Krishna in someone's heart? But we do not practice because our ego is so high. If you want to become humble, start practicing, offer obeisances. Okay, let's read. Let me see where we were. Okay, he said, God. Prabhupada bowed his head slightly, his palm folded, said, please accept my obeisances, he said. Then he asked God to please leave. Others admitted frankly that they were crazy or haunted by ghosts and sought relief from their mental suffering. Lord Solomon, he described in his own words as follows. I was looking for spiritual centers, places where one can go, not like stores where they ask you to live, but where you can actually talk to people and try to understand the ultimate truth. I would come to the Swamis knowing it was definitely a spiritual center. There was definitely something there. I was on drug and disturbed with the notion that I must be God or some very important personality way out of proportion to my actual situation. I was actually in trouble, mentally deranged because of so much suffering, and I would find a flow in to see him whenever I felt the whim to do so. I didn't make a point of going to his meetings, but a lot of times I would just come. One time I came and spent the night there. I was always welcome at any time to sleep in the storefront. I wanted to show the Swami what a sad case I was, so he should definitely do something for me. He told me to join him and he could solve my problems, but I wasn't ready. I was really into sex and I wanted to know what he meant by illicit sex. What was his definition? He said to me, quote, this means sex outside of marriage, unquote. But I wasn't satisfied with the answer, and I asked him for more details. He told me to first consider the answer he had given me, and then come back the next day and he would tell me more. So then I showed up with a girl. The Swami came to the door and said, quote, I'm very busy. I have my work. I have my translating. I cannot talk with you now, unquote. Well, that was the only time he didn't offer me full hospitality and full attention and talk with me as many questions as I had. So I left immediately with the girl. He was correct in his perceptions that I was simply going to see him just to try to impress the girl. He saw through it right away, and he rejected that type of association. But every time I came, I was in trouble, and he always helped me. Haribol. Sometimes young men would come with scholarly pretensions to test Swamiji's knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Quote, you have read the Gita, unquote. Prabhupada would say, quote, so what is your conclusion? If you claim to know the Gita, then you should know the conclusion that Krishna is present in, unquote. But most people didn't think that there was supposed to be a definite conclusion to the Gita. And even if there were such a conclusion, that didn't mean they were supposed to arrange their life around it. The Gita was a spiritual book, and you didn't have to follow it. So one young man approached the Swami asking, quote, what book will you lecture from the next week? Will you be teaching the Tibetan back of the dead? As if Prabhupada would teach spirituality like a college survey course in world religions. Everything is there in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada replied. Quote, we should study one verse for 3 months. Unquote. That says a lot of the things. What does it mean by study? Study means to dwell on it, understand the message, and put in your practical life. And then you see the benefit of following it. That's real knowledge, realization. And there were other questions. What about Camus? What is his philosophy? Prabhupada would ask. He said everything is absurd, and the only philosophical question is whether to commit suicide. Quote, that means everything is absurd for him. The material world is absurd, but there is a spiritual world beyond this one. That means he does not know the soul. The soul cannot be killed. Adherents of various thinkers approach him. What about Natsisi, Kafka, Timothy Leary, Bob Dylan? Prabhupada would ask what their philosophy was, and the particular follower would have to explain and defend his favorite intellectual hero. Quote, they are all mental speculators, unquote, Prabhupada would say. Quote, here in this material world, we are all conditioned souls. Your knowledge is imperfect. Your senses are blunt. What good is your opinion? We have to hear from the perfect authority, Krishna, unquote. Quote, do you mean to say that none of the great thinkers are God conscious? A boy asked. Quote, their sincerity is their God consciousness. But if we want perfect knowledge of God, then we have to consult Shastra. Unquote. Often there were challengers, but under the Swami's stare and hard logic, the challenger would usually trail off into thoughtful silence. Quote, is the spiritual knowledge of China advanced? Unquote. Prabhupada would sometimes answer simply by making a sour face. Quote, well, I'm a follower of Vedanta myself, unquote. Quote, do you know what Vedanta means? What is the first aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra? Do you know? No, I don't know. Then how can you speak of Vedanta? Vedescha sarve aham eva vedya. Krishna says that he is the goal of Vedanta. So if you are a Vedantist, then you must become Krishna conscious. What about the Buddha? Do you follow him? No. No, you just talk. Why don't you follow? Follow Krishna, follow Christ, follow Buddha, but don't just talk. Haribol. This sounds the same as Christianity. How is it any different? It is the same love of God. But who is a Christian? Who follows? The Bible teaches thou shalt not kill. But all over the world, Christians are expert in killing. Do you know that? I believe the Christians say that Jesus Christ died for our sins. So why are you still sinning? Very good. Although Prabhupada was a stranger to America, they were stranger to absolute knowledge. Whenever anyone would come to see him, he wouldn't waste time. He talked philosophy, reason, and argument. He constantly argued against atheism and impersonalism. He spoke strongly to prove the existence of God and the universality of Krishna consciousness. He talked often and vigorously, day and night, meeting all kind of questions and philosophies. 6:57, I didn't say it. We should be punctual in our practice. Sorry I wasted your 2 minutes of your time. But before you go, we would like to offer our humble obeisances at the desk of this wonderful Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Vancha kalpatarubhasya, kripan sindhu bhayavacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. If anybody has any question, comment, corrections, or chastisement, feel free to do so.